Hi, I'm Donna Williams and I'm going to be reading you part 8 from the book Nobody Nowhere. When I met Trish, she was behind bars too. I tried walking home from school down Martin Street, but the trees frightened me. They were the type that dropped all their leaves and they stuck out of the ground like these huge knobbly hands with crooked foreboding fingers. And though they had no leaves, their character, it seemed to dominate the whole street, so it always seemed full of shadows. The footpath had strangely laid out paving stones, so it took a lot of concentration to make sure that you didn't step on any of the lines. I hated Martin Street. So I began to walk up Trish's Street instead, and I ended up doing so for years. There were houses with roses in Trish's Street, and there was always this trail of rose petals along the footpath after I'd walked home. One day I stopped and I looked at some children who were behind bars. They called me over. I didn't seem to realize that they were simply in their grandmother's backyard, which just happened to be closed off by this tall cast iron gate. Trish had just moved to our school. She was quiet and shy, very gentle girl with very simple nature. She was also the eldest of 3 children. Although I was generally indifferent or controlling, I felt secure in the belief that Trish was now my older sister. We hung about at school together and I showed her how to rub her eyes to look into the sunlight to see the colours. She shared her grandma's homemade cakes and found someone that she could talk to. Though I listened, I often didn't hear, but I liked Trish, so I looked straight at her, and she didn't seem to notice. So I had become her best friend, and she'd become the proof that I was capable of having one. Mostly we'd ride bikes, play in the park, do word-matching games, and she'd talk about the things that she'd like to have. I'd sing and dance and play with my shadow, and she would sit and watch me and laugh. I didn't mind because I liked Trish. I went to stay at her house for a couple of weeks. I had my little suitcase and she'd loaned me one of her teddies. And the first night I was there, we laughed and giggled and made up names for things. Her mother told us to go to sleep. Trish cuddled her teddy and I lay next to the one that she'd given me. I'm scared, I told her. I don't want to go home. I don't want to stay here. She offered to let me sleep in her bed. People had long since given up trying to cuddle me, but I wanted to be like Trish, so I got into her bed as though I was her, and she cuddled me like a teddy bear. I was terrified. It seemed that tears were welling up from some part of me that was long buried and forgotten. We were these 2 7-year-old girls, one taking the comfort of hugging for granted and the other one rigidly tolerating it, finding it terrifying and excluding. Trish's mother came into the room to check on the sleeping girls. What are you both doing in the same bed? Come on, Donna, back to your own bed, she said. Good night, said a sleepy Trish. Good night, I echoed. For many years after that, I had the habit of lifting the blankets and inviting strangers that my sleeping years had heard into my room. I had become Trish. I laid back in my own bed in Trish's room. On that occasion, I was trying to be as neat as possible, and I'd begun by neatly rearranging the bed around my body, which I'd placed as perfectly in the middle as I could estimate. I had my arms over the covers rigidly by my side, so I was a perfect picture of neat. I decided I was taking up too much space in the bed. I moved myself over to the side of the bed and eventually got down into the tucked-in blankets, as though I was a piece of clothing that needed hanging up. I felt I was making too much mess. I got out of the bed and I sat on the side of it. I was taking up too much space. I sat on the tiniest edge of the end corner. I looked untidy in my nightie. I had to get dressed. I dressed myself for the next day, looking at the Venetian blinds in the darkness and hoping that the light would come soon. The clothes I'd brought, they weren't neat enough. I folded them all, trying to be as silent as possible and repacking my case, placing it next to my legs, which dangled on the floor at the corner of the bed. I looked at Trish and I wished that she was like me. And then I wished so much that I was like her. Tears rolled down my face as I watched her sleep. And the room was silent. Inside I was screaming loud enough to wake the dead. Her mother entered the room. "Donna, is that you? What on earth are you doing? You silly girl, what's wrong? Come on, up back into bed." "Why are you sitting there?" she said. "Don't want to go home." I said in a whisper. "You don't have to," said Trish's mother. "Don't want to stay here," I whispered. "Where do you want to go?" said Trish's mother. "Want to go," I repeated. "You can't go, Donna. There's nowhere to go," she explained. "Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go." I said over and over in my head, trying to understand the words, which my feelings obviously didn't acknowledge. Her mother helped me get back into my nightie, and I complied like a robot, hypnotized by my mind's repetition of the words, "nowhere to go." If anything summed up the nature of the trap I was in, well, then those words captured it like Shakespeare. Trish slowly disappeared from my awareness, but she became the cause of a dream which was to be repeated over and over for the next 15 years. When I was 22, I woke up terrified and frozen, staring at the Venetian blinds in a friend's room. Such simple things left such long-term impact. I'd stayed away from home many occasions by the time I was 7, but it hadn't affected me emotionally before. I'd now been brutally exposed to my own vulnerability in the world, and a world that I had found foreign and unreachable. I became angry at my innocence and naivety, and so Willie took the stage as the curtain went down on the first compromise I had found between Donna and Carol, the dancing doll.